Hey guys, it is that time once again for another monthly wrap up, but this is a special one because this is the first one of 2026. It is finally the end of January actually. This month honestly felt like it was going on and on and on and on and on
2,000 years later.
and on, and it literally felt like it was never going to stop. But here we are, we've reached the end, and it is time to talk about all the books that I read for the month of January. So let's get into it. Generally, how I like to start the year off, and I've done this for the past year and this year. I like to do a 24-hour readathon going into the new year. So this past year, so 2025 into 2026, I did that. So I started the year off with Your Knife, My Heart by K.M. Warnova, and I enjoyed myself. This was a short read, so I was able to finish up pretty quickly. And essentially what this book is about is this girl who's part of this prestigious family, and she's kind of like their unaliver of sorts. And they kind of throw her under the bus, and she is facing, death row. And she gets taken to this underground government military and to train there and do things for the government. But things take a turn, and she has to become partners with this man who is infamous for killing his partners because he's under this secret drug operation that doesn't really allow him a lot of leeway as far as control goes. So that's basically the gist of this book, and it is an interesting read, to say the least. It does have its ups, its downs. It is a little spicy, but I mean, it's an intense read, and it definitely kept me on my toes for sure. I did enjoy this book. Yes, I did enjoy it. I loved it. It was a short and sweet read. That's all I really have to give to this book. It's a short and sweet read that kept me on my toes. And then I moved on to My Blade You're Back, which I was hoping for, the same intensity. I was hoping for the same, fun banter, the same relationships, but all that I loved from the first book got lost in this one. I don't know what happened, but everything. The MMC, we lost everything. I like everything that we got, his development, gone. The characters, the side characters, I don't know what we were supposed to be given from these characters. Like the one of the side characters that we were met up in this one, who becomes friends with the main characters. Something happens, and I expect there to be some sort of grief for this person, and for them to be handling their grief. Maybe in this one, no grief. No grief. It doesn't make any sense. So there's just not a lot of character development. Things are so wildly unbelievable. Like, I have to suspend, like, I get this is fiction. Like, I get this is fiction, but like suspending disbelief times like 1,000. I just was not enjoying myself to the max. To the max. None of the characters made any sense coming from this book. It was completely different. And because this one was so much longer, the pacing was really off, and I just did not have a good time. So I gave this book 2.5 stars. So 4.75 stars for the first book, 2.5 stars for this book. Was it worth it to read the series? No. No. I'm contemplating getting rid of the series, actually. As a whole, no. No. All right, so the next book that I read is Untamed Shore by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And this one was interesting. It's kind of thriller-esque. So this girl, well, this full stop. This takes place in like the late 70s, like 1979. And it's like a small fisherman town. Nothing really happens. And this girl just feels trapped. She doesn't really have much to do. and she wants to like have an adventure. She just feels stuck, and she has this opportunity to basically help out with this couple who have money. So just to help out around their house and basically get more income for her to experience and save up to do those big things that she wants to do with her life. And this couple also has a companion, so she ends up having a relationship with this person and all of the things that comes with that. So she's starting to finally live the life that she wants. But with this life that she's getting, some weird things start happening, and she is thrown into this life of let's just say murder. And it's a crazy time. And honestly, I listened to this book in a day. It was thrilling. It was a fun time. Was it a little predictable at points? Yes, but it was still entertaining. I enjoyed the pacing, the author, great writing. I had no real issues with it except it being a little bit predictable. I did love the feminine rage in here. It was top notch. I loved how much the FMC was not feeling sympathetic. If she was being thrown out to dry, she was taking people down. She was taking people down. She was not going down without a fight, and I loved that about this book. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this if you love female rage, because this definitely had it. So I gave this book 4 stars. Definitely recommend it. Now the next book that I read, I knew going in that it was going to hurt. This book is infamous for being a heart-wrenching read, and I knew that. I knew it. Did I still feel utterly betrayed by the book when I was destroyed? Absolutely, 100%. And the book I'm talking about is The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. Yes, the same Rebecca Yarros who wrote the Fourth Wing books, that Rebecca Yarros. And if you didn't know, this book is about this woman who is just not having a great time, and she decides to basically set up a Dear John situation, like a pen pal with one of her brother's comrades. Her brother is in the army, and she doesn't know this man. She's never met this man, but her brother knows that he doesn't have any family or anything, and they kind of form like a kinship and lean on each other. And then her brother passes away unexpectedly. This is not a spoiler. This happens within literally the first, I want to say, couple of chapters, and it's on the back of the book. So, so that happens, and this man that she's been going back and forth with comes to see her and try to help her through this hard time, and that's essentially the book, the plot line. And if you don't think that's rough enough, it definitely gets worse. It's a hard read for many reasons. I thought, the military aspect was going to be the roughest point and why it was going to be devastating, but no, there are so many elements. It's like Shrek. It's got layers. So many layers. It's an onion. I literally could not, I didn't feel safe. I knew that there was something that was going to hurt, and I never felt like there was going to be a moment of solace, because I was like, I don't feel like we're too happy. At certain points, I felt we're too happy, and we're too happy to be safe here. A few things I didn't love about this book, though, it was repetitive in some ways. The FMC does have a few hang-ups of why she doesn't want to be with the MMC, just like her own trauma, but it comes up so much that it feels a little frustrating, not even just for the MMC's perspective, but for the reader's perspective as well. And then the MMC, for his reasoning for why he decides to keep things to himself, is very frustrating as well, because it doesn't really make sense. But that, I mean, that could just be a character thing. That's just a me thing. That just makes me mad. And that, yeah. Overall, I enjoyed the book. It did what it was supposed to do. It made me cry, as evidence. But I enjoyed the book. I gave it 4.75 stars. Absolutely recommend if you need a bad cry, because I did not feel good with this cry at all. Next up, I read a series. I've had them on my shelf for a while. I actually have the special editions of these books, and it's marketed as a dark cowboy romance, and I've never read one of those before. So first book is called Knotted, and yeah, so this book, it's about this couple who they go through it. They're like high school sweethearts, but essentially they grew up together, so they've always been together, and they plan on being married and everything. Like, they are in it for the long haul, but one night kind of changes everything, where something really horrific happens, and it kind of drives them apart. And yeah, that's essentially the plot, because I really can't say much on it because that kind of ruins it. But yeah, it is definitely a hard read, especially when we get to that horrific night. That horrific night is a tough one. But this is my cover of the book, Knotted by Pam Godwin. And I really enjoyed the intensity of the moments. I think the author did a really good job with putting you into that scene. Like I said, it was hard to get through, but it really was an impactful time. Like, I was like, whoa. And I really, really, really loved the love that the two characters had for one another. What I didn't love was the miscommunication trope that was used, and the reasoning behind why the characters do what they do. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I feel like the resolution was quick, a little too quick for me, with so much buildup. Like, we had such a strong start in the beginning, and then things kind of wrap up really, really quickly towards the end. And I didn't love that, but I think overall it was still a pretty good book. So I gave this book 4.5. Well, let me check my notes. I gave this book 4 stars, flat 4 stars, for the reasons I said before. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. It was still solidly good. I would recommend this book, but let's move on to the second book in the series. Again, these are standalone books. You can read any of them out of order, but I would suggest reading them in order just to get like the full impact. So the second book, moving on. Okay, so we lost the sun a little bit. I had to turn on a light. But the second one is Buckled. And this one was my least favorite out of the series. This one follows the second brother in this little family. And essentially this plot line is, there is a woman who is trying to figure out what happens to someone she knows. And last known place this person was on their ranch. And so she goes to try to figure out more about this information by going to the ranch and essentially asking questions. That's basically it. That's basically it. That is the essential plot line. My biggest pet peeve with this one is she's a vegetarian, and they're on a ranch. They're on a ranch. I mean, I know, like, opposites and everything, opposites attract, but like, I feel like those are very opposites. Like, it's one thing if you're like a vegetarian because you're like, oh, like I don't like the taste of meat, or but she doesn't eat meat because she loves animals. Like, she loves animals to the point where they're like, she doesn't want to see animals hurt. I don't know how that, like, there's a point in this book where she saves one of their like cows, and she's like, you can't kill this cow. This is my cow now. Like, this is mine. Like, this is my pet cow on a ranch. On a ranch. Yeah, I don't and it baffles me because this person, the FMC, she's like a reporter. She like writes articles and stuff. And she just transitions into ranch life like that drop of a hat. I was like, how do you transition into, like, and she's like, oh, I love this life. I'm like, I don't know how you go from that to this. Like, it's no big thing. Like, no true transition. It's just, she's suddenly like, ranch life, love it. It was like, it doesn't make any development sense. For me, it just didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. Yeah, I had a hard time, and plus there was no slow burn. It was like pretty insta lusty, not really insta lovey, because I don't know where the love came from. They didn't really spend a lot of time together, these characters. I didn't understand where the love was coming from. Yeah, I had a lot of issues with this book. I gave this book 3 stars. Yeah, I gave this book 3 stars. And it was hard to get through. I probably should have rated it a little lower. I did not enjoy this book. But on to the third one. All right, last but not least, we have Booted. And this one was okay. This story lands on the FMC from the first book. This is her brother's story. And this brother, I don't want to say too much on this character because I don't want to spoil anything for the first book. But he's been away for a very long time, and he's just come back, and there's this woman in his old bedroom, and she's been through a lot. She's been through a lot of trauma, and she's trying to, get through her trauma by leaning on this motley crew of sorts. And he's also working through his own trauma, and they kind of lean on each other by working through essentially their trauma together. And what I did love about this story in particular, comparing the other two, is that they actually spent time together, unlike the other ones. Because like the first one was good because they were like childhood best friends and childhood lovers, whatever, and they knew each other, and like they did spend some time together. Second one, no time spent together. But this one, they actually had like dates, they actually talked, had conversations. It was great. And this one, she did get into ranching life pretty quickly, but at least it made sense for how she got into ranching life. The trauma in here is pretty trigger hefty, for sure. I did have some issues at certain points with it. I would say that I had problems with the fact that this FMC made me angry with her reasoning. But I did love that she did get smarter. And she wasn't like, well, if I sacrifice myself, like, no. She fooled me once, shame on me. And she was not going to get fooled again. And I love that about her in this one. There's a lot of push and pull in here. I did enjoy that. It was just the pacing was a bit off. I did have a hard time getting through it at certain points. The tension towards the end was really great. It was a little slow. But overall, it was just okay. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Definitely better than the last, but not the best one. I'd say that's still the first one. Would I recommend the series as a whole? If you like cowboy romance and you also like dark romance, give it a shot. But it's not my favorite. Not my favorite. All right, so this next book I was recommended. It is a hockey romance. It's called Gravity by Tal Bauer, and this one's a little hard to really describe as far as plotline goes. So I'm just gonna let you guys look that one up. I did try to describe it, and then I realized I was making it very convoluted. So I'm gonna leave that up to you guys. So I decided to read this book because of Heated Rivalry. I am in my Heated Rivalry era, and I love hockey romance in general. But I do love hockey romance. My all-time favorite one is still Elle Kennedy and Serena Bowen's Us and Him and Us. And I just needed something else. So I read this book, and it took me 4 scores and 7 years to get through it. Because it was just so slow. I did contemplate DNFing it. For one, the character development, non-existent. The one of the characters who is very much knowing of his sexuality, knows that he's gay. I feel like when we get introduced to his character, I feel like we're meeting his character in the middle, if that makes sense. Like, we should know so much more about his character when we meet him than what we do. It's hard to describe. And then the second guy, who has like a bisexual awakening of sorts, I don't really know, because he doesn't really have like a back and forth with himself as one would, who's been presumably straight his entire life, who's never had to question his sexuality or anything. Like, he doesn't question his sexuality or like how he feels about that. He just was like, oh yeah, sure, I'm gay now. Like, I feel like someone who struggles with, going back and forth with themselves, I think that's like an internal battle, but like we don't get to see that internalized battle or anything. He just like one day he's like, yeah, I'm good with it. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Would have liked to see some like internalized struggle or something like that, or like, not saying like gayness is supposed to be really hard to get through or anything like that, but I'm saying if you're like presumably straight your entire life and you haven't like even thought about being like, you're like not even thinking about, well, like, I feel like there was just something we could have done. Not to mention, this book had a lot of French in it, and as me, who I am trying to learn French, a lot of French, is like, this is like top tier for me. But for other people who don't want to learn French, this was probably a struggle for them, because there's a lot of French. And if you are reading this book on Kindle and you're having issues with like the dictionary function, you are probably struggling to get through this book, because the translations, you need them. And it was just slow. There was a lot of hockey. And I get this is a hockey romance, but there was so much hockey and not a lot of romance. Like, there needs to be balance. If you're going to have a lot of hockey, you need to at least have a lot of romance. But the romance was subpar. They didn't really go on any dates. And it was mostly just like spice hockey, and not like forming any connection hockey. There was a moment, there is like a little scare towards the end, which was like the most fun for me to read, because I was like, oh, okay, we finally get some like intensity. But that was it. I was done. And this is a short book too. This is not a super long book. I think it's like less than 300 pages, but it felt like 500 pages to me, and it took me so long to get through. So for those reasons, I gave this book 3 stars. 3 stars. All right, next up, I have a duology that I've been meaning to get to for quite some time. First book is The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. And this book is essentially about a girl who loses both her parents, and she is taking care of her siblings. They're barely making ends meet, and she gets this opportunity to kind of make some more money for the family. And so she takes this opportunity, but in this opportunity, she kind of gets strong-armed into making a deal with Faye, which she didn't know existed. But in this, she learns that her father, who she thought was dead, still might be living. So this puts her into the realm of the Fae and on this adventure, and an adventure it is, for sure. I will say there is an egregious amount of characters in this book, and the POVs. The POVs, I did have a problem with the amount of POVs because it doesn't really tell you whose POV you're in. You kind of figure it out as you go, and this is told in third person, which I know that's like a no-no for a lot of people, being told in third person. It doesn't really bug me, stories being told in third person, unless we're doing like multiple POVs all of the time and not being told whose POV we're in, because then that's a big pet peeve of mine. That happened for A Little Life. Ooh, that drove me insane. I'm not gonna lie, that drove me insane. But for this one, it's hard because there's so many characters to try to, you know, keep straight, and then to also be thrown into different characters' minds, especially characters that don't really matter. Like at one point we're in like the mind of like this random snake, and you're like, why? Why? I don't, why? Why? Literally why? But it is a fun time overall. I did love the story. There is some intensity in here that I enjoy. The pacing, top notch. The slow burn romance, 10 out of 10. Yeah, things just unfold beautifully. I think that this author does a really good job with story world building, because I really felt like I was thrown into a whole new world. It was one thing after another. I was enraptured into this whole world. So really loved this book. And then I dove into The Last Wish of Bristol Cage Switch. Obviously, I had to. And it honestly took a turn that I didn't see coming. Yes, I saw some things going in the direction that wasn't, you know, the happily ever after that you get from a lot of like fantasy books. But this took a lot of tragic ends that I did not foresee. And I actually thought that was like a breath of fresh air. And yeah, I really enjoyed ultimately how this story turned out. And again, we saw some feminine rage, and I was here for it. So I gave both of these books 4 stars. I definitely would suggest this duology to anyone who wants a good, like, quick fantasy read. But again, lots and lots of characters. I will say there is a death of a character, I believe, in the definitely in the second book. And I couldn't remember who this character was because there's so many characters. So the impact of that character's death didn't really hit as well, because I couldn't remember who they were. That's how many characters were in this book. But if you can get over that and just enjoy the story, you're golden. Next up is The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. Now, I started this series because I actually own the third book, which is Life's Too Short, and I haven't actually read this one yet. It is on my to-do list. It is my next up read, but I realized that I need to read the other 2 because they all kind of interconnect. So the first book is The Friend Zone, and I absolutely hate a friends to lovers. It is my least favorite trope, and it's because usually friends to lovers is paired with a miscommunication trope. It just happens because why are the friends lovers? Usually because one doesn't talk to the other. That's usually why. And that's why I absolutely hate this trope. And well, I was unsurprisingly upset this entire book. But essentially this book is about this woman who is in a relationship with someone who is in like the military, and she meets this man who is a friend of her best friend's fiance, and they kind of hit it off and they're like having a great time, and then she ends up forming a really like close relationship with this man who's like helping out with her business and everything. And yeah, they just get really close, and she ends up her man's, who's overseas, ends up ending the relationship with her, and she starts this relationship with this other man. But the whole hang up with this other man who she could see a future with, if only she could have kids. He's a big family man and she cannot have children. And that's the whole plot of this book. And what drives me insane is if she could just express why she can't have kids to him. That is like the biggest thing. And she takes like the things that he says unknowingly, like his thoughts on like adoption or something like that, him unknowingly saying these things because he doesn't know her situation. And it made me so angry. I was angry for the majority of this book. Also, the cheating aspect of this book, I'm not a cheating trope kind of gal. No, she did not physically cheat on her man's who was across seas, but emotionally she definitely was cheating on him, and I don't love it. I don't love it. I don't like that. So I already wasn't feeling good about this relationship because of the emotional cheating. And then on top of this, just like the miscommunication of it all. And then there is a tragic instance in this book. I'm not going to say what happens. I don't want to spoil anything, but like I felt like that was unnecessary. So overall, like I really was not having a good time throughout this entire book. I mean, when the FMC and the MMC are together, I'm having a good time because the banter is still phenomenal. It is top tier, as I always expect with Abby Jimenez, because her writing is great, her banter is great, dialogue 10 out of 10. The relationships are always great. It was just the miscommunication, the cheating, the plot line wasn't my favorite. It wasn't. But overall, I mean, I had to read it. I had to read it to get to the second book, to be able to get to the third book, which is what I own. So I got through it, and I gave that book 3 stars. 3 stars, so yeah. It is what it is. I still have hatred for that trope. Friends to lovers. Until someone can find me a friends to lovers that I actually enjoy, I will say that that is the worst trope known to man. Sorry, but not really. Okay, so next up is the Happy Ever After playlist, which is the second book in the series by Abby Jimenez. And I'm not going to say what the plot is because it kind of, spoils what happens in the first book. So I'm not going to say it. But what I will say is the FMC, she is a fun character to follow.
You know, I said fun character to follow. I really meant intriguing because what she goes through is more traumatic than fun, but she is a very interesting character.
Mainly because I love the way that Abby approached her grief and how she worked through it. Because grief isn't really like, it's like it's steps for sure. And we definitely get to see those steps. But sometimes you take a step and then you take a step back. And we got to see, how you go forward and then you kind of come back every now and then. And I love seeing that. And I do believe that Abby says it in her like notes that she did base this story off of someone near and dear to her who went through the same thing. And I think it really shows in this book, those experiences that she's pulled from. And I did like the MMC. He was a fun like golden retriever. I didn't love the third act breakup because there is one in this book, and the reasoning behind it. I hate I hate when a man thinks he knows better. When he thinks that he knows what's best for the FMC, I don't like that. I don't. But overall, I did love the MMC and how much he cared for her. And Abby Jimenez does write a wonderful man, and this character was great. And there was a dog in here, and that dog was adorable. There was a dog in the last one, actually, too. I do love that Abby does like to add animals to her characters, to her stories. And I gave this book 4.5 stars. I gave it 4.5 stars. I did enjoy it. I'm hoping to love the third book just as much as this one, or even more so. Because again, Abby does really good with the banter and just the dialogue. I just couldn't get down with that first book. Couldn't get down with it. But the second one, much better. Much, much better. Next up, I have The Queen of Carnage by Candace Wright. This was actually given to me by one of my friends. She was just getting rid of some books, and I was like, okay, I'll grab this one. I was not expecting what was going to go down in this book. This is a motorcycle club, reverse harem type book. And yeah, it's essentially this girl who sees a dog that's getting like abused. Like, this man is like kicking this dog, so she decides to save this dog and kidnapping this dog by kidnapping the dog. And on her way out, her running out, she gets snapped up by another man and is like, why are you stealing my dog? And essentially this dog is the motorcycle club's dog, and she has to stay as punishment for her trying to steal this dog. She has to stay at this motorcycle club for like 30 days. And yeah, that's essentially the plot. And I wasn't expecting the plot twists. This felt like I was reading, actually, I was listening to this book. This felt like I was listening to a soap opera unfold. Like the first like 30% was hard to get through. Purely just because of the blatant misogyny of a motorcycle club and the lack of character development, which the character development is laughable. There is no character development in this book. If that's what you're looking for in this book, look elsewhere. That's not what we're here for in this book anyways. But the other plot twist, it was astounding. It was like I had to take a moment. I had to rewind multiple times to track everything that was happening because so much was going on. I was like, I felt like Charlie Day when he's like with the red string trying to connect all the dots. That was me. So much was happening in such a small amount of time. People were dying left and right. There was random siblings being found, family drama being unfolded. Like my mouth was on the floor. I couldn't bring it back up. For like the last 40% of this book, I was astounded. I'm still speechless, to be honest. Like, this was pure entertainment. Pure entertainment. That's all I really have to say about this book. I gave it 4 stars. There's like 8 books in the series. I only own the first one, so. Will I continue? I'll think about it. Because it wasn't like necessarily like great. Because like I said, there's no character development in this book. At one point, one character is one way, and then the next time we see this character, he's a completely different person. Completely different person. He's changed. Doesn't make any sense, but, you know. Yeah, so, I mean, entertainment, plot twist, crazy. But, yeah, I had a good time. That's all that matters. All right, so next up, I have really just one book. So I decided to read this duology, What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. And this duology has been on my shelf for quite some time. I have both books. And I was like, okay, I'll listen to it because I work from home, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And I was like, okay, let's just dive in to this book. The plot line of this story is this girl who's lost her parents. They both died kind of like suspiciously. They disappeared in Egypt. No one knows where they've gone. They just haven't been found in like a long time, so they've just been presumed dead. And this FMC needs more information. She's like, I can't just take they've disappeared and now they're dead. So she decides to go to Egypt and try to parse out the truth. She's gonna go meet her uncle, who she's really only met once in her life. She's 19 years old. This is the 1800s, like late 1800s. She really doesn't have, skills. Even though she says that she's like super good up here, she's like not, because she's a woman. She's a woman in the 1800s. She doesn't really have a lot of experience because women didn't really have a lot of experience in the outside world because they weren't really allowed to have experience. So, but she goes out to Egypt to meet up with her uncle to try to like figure out what happened with her parents. That's the general plot of the first book anyways. And might I say, this was the roughest read I have had in the month of January. The entire month of January. I could not stand this book. In fact, I had finished this book. I had finished it with sheer force of will. I finished it, and I contemplated going back and forth with myself whether or not I wanted to listen to the second book, because it was available, but I was like, I don't know if I want to, because I really, really, really hated that book. And I had decided, because I own it, I was like, I feel like I should since I own it. I decided not to, because I was like, I'm just gonna read the summary. And I'm glad I did, because it would have been a waste of my time after reading the summary of the second book. Because ultimately the FMC, who I found to be absolutely frustrating, naive, and just plain out stupid, to not learn from any of her mistakes in the first book. She does the same things from the first book. She does the same things in the second book. Does not learn from her mistakes. Trust the same types of people. The MMC, who I didn't entirely like in the first one, gets worse. It gets worse and is unapologetic about it in the second one. So I don't know why. The plot line in the first one is a bit convoluted, and the magic isn't really explained. Magic, not explained at all. Like, we're just given what the magic is like, and that's it. That's it. Sure. It's very slow. Very slow. Yeah, I just didn't enjoy myself at all. I gave the first book two stars. Obviously, I didn't read the second one, so I don't recommend the series. In fact, I'm trying to get rid of the series. So take that with what you will. Okay, finally, I read the Cursed Legacy series, which includes Blood Oath, Shadow Heart, Twisted Soul, and Divine Fate. Now, this series had a lot of potential. This series follows this girl who has essentially been tortured her entire life. She's been brought down into like an underworld situation and has been raised to be like a reckoning on the regular people, on the world above. And that is her mission. But in the accomplishing of this mission, she gets attached. She gets mated to these four mans in this academy. And she has to deal with these mate bonds as well as trying to accomplish this mission. And that's essentially the plot for the first book. I'm not going to get into the plot for the second, third, or fourth because we're not trying to spoil anything here. And I think that's an interesting premise. I think that is a cool premise. I think it is fun for sure, but I think the execution needed work. I think the first one was super good. I think that, wow, how many times can I say I think? It was good, but the characters needed some work. There needed to be some development. There was a lot of questions I had for this world building. The author really throws you in to the deep end, not really explaining a lot of things, which could be fine if those questions are answered throughout the series, but I fear that these questions should have been answered sooner rather than later. And that really hurt the series for me. And then the MMCs as a whole for the series, yes, they're obsessed, and I love me some obsessed MMCs. However, there comes a point, like there's a line. You can be obsessed, but you can't be so obsessed that you can't do things. Like that kind of gives me the ick, to be honest. And they reach that point where the MMCs are actually useless. If the FMC is not near them, like she has to be in like the same room, like same like eye, like they have to have eyes on her in order for like them to do anything, or like she has to be near them in order for them to be like, okay, yeah, we can do things. Or like their like whole brain cells can only be focused on her and nothing else. I need you to have some will outside of myself. That just gives me like claustrophobia, to be honest. If you can only think of me and not anything else, I'm claustrophobic. Like don't stand, like, what's that song? Don't stand so close to me. Like that feels too much. That's too much. That's too much obsessive. I couldn't. So I thought that was just too much. I think the pacing is a bit off for all of the books. I think there's a lot of tension. I think the first book is really good with the tension. The second book is not bad. The third book kind of throws off, and the fourth book is really off. I think the villains kind of die off really quickly. The big bads for every book that we have. Any one that's perceived as a big bad kind of has a like a semi-anticlimactic end for all that the hype that they've been given. I think the endings are a bit predictable as well. It just overall isn't like the greatest time, but it's not a bad time. What did I give these? Let me grab some notes. So for Blood Oath, I gave 4.5 stars because I did have the best time reading that one, and it's the shortest book. Shadow Heart, I gave 4 stars. We started taking a dip here. Twisted Soul, I gave 3.5 stars. And then the final book, Divine Fate, I gave 3.5 stars. I do remember, because that's the final book that I read for the month of January, so it's most fresh in my mind. I remember the first 300 pages being a great time, because we had a goal in mind, and we were just diving towards that goal. We were doing a bunch of things towards that goal, and then once that goal was finished, it was just like, well, we became stagnant. And that's when things took a turn for me, and I was having a hard time getting through the final like nearly 300 more pages. So that's what I mean by pacing issues and stuff like that. So I would love to recommend the series. I think it was, again, a good premise, but the execution could have needed some more. I think a good development editor would have been here. Anyways, let's get to the stats. So I read 2 physical books, 8 e-reader books, and then 8 audiobooks, and that totals up to 18 books total.
As you can see, I've been slacking on updating my counter thus far.
Now, this is not my best January. Usually January is the best month as far as reading goes for me out of the year, but not this January. It's just been like a lot going on for the world, and I just hadn't been in the best headspace for reading. But hopefully we'll turn that around for February, and I can get a lot of reading in, and yeah, hopefully things will be on the up and up. But anyways, what my favorite book for the month would be surprisingly, Queen of Carnage by Candace Wright. And I say this not because, I mean, The Last Letter was fantastic, and so was the other above 4.5, 4.75 star reads, but I really needed something that was so unserious, like so entertaining that I could just like sit back and just have a good time. And that's what this book was for me. I just needed something just entertaining, and that's what this book gave to me, was just entertainment value, because things have just been so much that it was just like a breath of fresh air. And yeah, so that's my favorite book of the month. And then my most anticipated read for the month of February is Annie Davenport's Our Vicious Oaths. It's actually my book club pick for the month of February. I started a book club on Fable. If you'd like to join, I will put the link in the description below. Yeah, but that's it, guys. That is my wrap up for January. That's the first one for 2026. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books. If you agree with me or disagree with me on any of these books, let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk about it. Or let me know what your favorite read is. Yeah, keep me posted. But until next time, guys, read on, my bookish friends.